the title of the book, now it mentions it's Finding True Freedom. What is the significance of freedom in your book? I mean, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, it's a loaded question, all right, because, you know, my dad went into politics, into military service for the cause of freedom in this country.
Yeah.
He never wanted to see us go towards government control of everything, and that's why he built the Republican Party in the South. But the interesting thing in the book is my dad ends up finding true freedom where he wasn't expecting to find it. He found it in following God's will for his life.
See, that's preaching stuff right there.
Yeah, it's preaching stuff, so I better be careful.
No, yeah, go ahead. That's fine.
But one of the things we learned in the book is that my dad and I have both been in the underground church in China at separate times. We've both been in different parts of the Middle East. I have been in some deep, dark corners of the Middle East. Yet I saw believers who had spiritual freedom. Okay? They didn't have earthly freedoms, but they had spiritual freedom. And then, as you know, because you helped in this, my dad ends up spending 10 years of his life helping Romania to come to freedom after communism. But again, those people in the underground church, under communism, they had spiritual freedom. No, they didn't have the earthly freedom, but they knew Christ and His grace. And so you can know Christ whether you have freedoms or not. And so the book is a paradox of earthly and spiritual freedoms from the beginning all the way to the end.
And the way it's written, it does capture anyone. I mean, someone that would be even a pagan would enjoy reading this book.
Because of the history and the politics and some of the behind-the-scene things that come out that people did not know until they read the book.
It's fascinating. Yeah. And then, but it's a great book that would get people saved if they will read it word for word. It's a great book. I got to tell you the quick story about your daddy. We were in Romania, second time. It was November 1990. Okay, we're riding down the road and we're taking pictures. We're in a car, and there is the Romanian government, and they still had some securitate, remember. Well, we're going, and this government truck with army men turn around and follow us and make us stop. They get us out of the car. It's snowing. We're in the middle of nowhere. There was your daddy and me and John Simmons, I think, and two other people and an interpreter. We didn't know what they're saying. They just had guns. And they made us get out. And we had to put our hands up against the truck like that. And they start taking our cameras and throwing our film out of our cameras. And I'm out like this, and I said, Harry, what do we do? He said, pray. I'm scared. We're scared to death. And I thought, look, you're supposed to know what's going on here. But I always remember, you know, your dad always had not only great comebacks, but he always had such a demeanor about him in every situation. I always remember, always. And out of that, I guess that's where I found so much more interest in the book, because I could read between some of those lines, you know.
Right.
And you knew that here was a God-fearing man. See, I only knew your dad really after the time he really got saved.
You didn't know the persecution he put me through, now did you, Benny?
No, I didn't.
Which is also in the book.
And it was good. No, it was
when I got to Romania in 1998, and I saw all that my dad's ministry had done to help the government and the churches to come to the surface after being in the underground, I was just overwhelmed by the goodness of God, and that is why I wrote the book. It was too good of a story not to tell. But when I was in Romania, the pastors asked me, they said, Miss Ginny, what was your daddy like before he became a Christian? And I thought about it, and I said, you know, he was kind of like some of your communist leaders in that he did everything he could to stop me from going down the path I was going. Didn't want me to go to the Bible college, didn't want me to become a missionary, thought I would never be a success. And he did everything he could to stop me, but he did it because he loved me and he didn't injure me physically.
Yeah.
And my dad was on the front row of that church, and he said, it's true, every word of it. I was horrible. So he said that in front of the Romanians. Well, they thought that was so funny. They said, Harry, like communist leader.
and you know, and then your dad had many audiences with Ilianescu. Am I saying the name? The president of Romania.
Yes, he did.
After Ceausescu and Helena, his wife, I think they were put to death on Christmas Day, if I'm not mistaken. If my Romanian history is correct. And then, of course, Laszlo Tokes, who was really in the beginning of down in Timisoara. I think that's where that was.
Right, where the revolution,
where the revolution took place.
Right.
And hearing your dad talk about all that, and then witnessing to these politicians. I mean, Iliescu was a philosopher.
And a communist.
Right. And
the Romanians kept electing the communist.
And your dad continued to witness to them. And what was so fascinating to me is they kept inviting him back. Brother Harry, Brother Harry.
You know, Daddy made a deal with them. He said, if you will give your people religious freedom, I will try to help you get the most favored treaty status.
And didn't he get that accomplished?
Well, he helped. You know, he can't give it to a Congress has to give it to them. Right. But he went back to James Baker under George Bush, the elder one.
Secretary of State.
Right. And he did lobby to help them get it. He said, I will not do this for a price. I will do it for the people of Romania. But this is what I want in return. I want you to allow religious freedom in this country.
I remember.
And occasionally, they would try to stop a Christian radio station or TV station from coming in, or a church from being built. And my dad would call up the president and he would say, remember our promise? Right. He'd say, I'll take care of it. So really, they struggled to come to religious freedom after communism. Just because the communist walls fell, people don't understand. They didn't know how to come to freedom, and they still didn't have religious freedom. So I feel like that was God's call on my dad's life, although he forbid me to be a gosh-awful missionary and to go to that Bible college. The call of my dad's life was, he didn't realize it, but he was going to end up being a missionary of sorts.
And he was. I mean, and you
God
know,
has his sense of humor, doesn't he, Benny?
Absolutely, he does. And I think about that, and I think about your mom, how, you know, she had gotten some involved. And I think about all of you, how you know, it just that trickle-down effect. All right, here's a question now. If your dad were with us today, we know that the Lord took him home back in 2007.
2007.
What would he think about and you know, not trying to be politicized or trying to get into politics, but just a general question. What would he think about where the United States of America is today? I'm not talking about the leadership, or I'm not talking about anything like that.
He would not be happy with us going towards government control. Because the reason he built the Republican Party in the South was he felt that control was best at the local, state, and local level. And he never wanted to see us go towards government control. And every time I turn around, they're passing one more thing that gives us more government control. And yes, our country's in a crisis right now. But my dad would say, I believe he would say, that our crisis is caused more by our spiritual problems than our political problems. And if he were advising a president today, I believe he would say, bow with me on your bended knee, and let's ask God to help this country to bring it back to what it used to be, rather than taking God out of every aspect of our public arena. He would be very, very upset. Now, he'd be happy with some things that are happening. He would be overjoyed that Tim Scott was elected from the Charleston area as a congressman, because my dad wanted to get more African Americans involved in the Republican Party to hold office, and he opened the door for that. And here it is finally happening, a congressman from South Carolina. So he would be overjoyed at that. But it's the moral and spiritual decline of this country that would concern him the most. And one of the things my dad and I learned is that our freedoms were given to us as a blessing from God, so that we can do His will in our life, not so we can shower ourselves with every good and wonderful thing and for our own selfish desires. Our freedoms were given to us. I could have never gone to the underground church in China if I weren't free. Daddy could have never helped Romania. You could have never helped Romania if we weren't the citizens of a free country. I think of all the things my dad was able to do in his ministry, it's because he was free. So I believe that keeping those freedoms in this country is very, very important, and I'm seeing a little bit at a time, we're beginning to lose our freedoms. The Romanians said to me when I was there 2 years ago, why are y'all moving towards what we came from?
That's right.
Because we do not want to go back to government control.
And see, this is my grave concern. You and I know this, and if you are traveled around this world, you understand that. But for some reason, we have people who either are not traveling or wanting to sense or believe that. And again, I do. I know your daddy would say the issue in America is not politics. It is not a Democrat
He saw that
issue
politics in
or
and of
Republican
itself cannot save the world.
No. And
sure.
it isn't. I mean, he would say it is a spiritual issue pure and simple as that. I mean, who would have thought, to put it just in layman terms, who would have ever thought we wouldn't be calling it a Christmas tree but a holiday tree?
Right.
Help me,
Right.
Lord Jesus. I mean,
Right.
really and truly. I mean,
We're in that day and age.
I mean, I just can't imagine what your dad would say and the advice he would give. But I do think that you've captured the spirit of your dad in there, and
thank
yet,
you.
I mean, you have, and yet at the same time, your spirit is in there as well. I mean, it is.
It's definitely a father-daughter story.
It is. It's a
Definitely
beautiful,
is.
beautiful story.
Because my conversion came first, and through prayer, and through trying to live my life as a Christian before him. Not that I was perfect.
No.
But that had an influence on his life, which affected my family, which, as the Romanians say, eventually affected them. So that just shows you the multiplication process of one Young Life ministry affected one child here, who affected a father, who affected a family, who affected another country. So, you know, Christianity is a multiplication process.
Yeah. And the book really shows the beautiful side of that. I'm going to let my daughter Natasha read this because, as I said, you know, she had worked for Senator Thurman in D.C. And she met your dad a couple of times when he was at church. And, you know, she would be fascinated. And, you know, again, I think this is one of those good books that fathers that have daughters ought to get and pass it on. I really do. I mean, I think it's so genuine and all.